Hello, welcome back. I hope you're doing very well. A quick video. One of my Patreon supporters, Michael, hello Michael, asked a question a few days ago about the way I go about using Force and Ableton Live together. And I thought that was a good subject for a video because, to be honest, it's taken me quite a while to figure out what for me is the best way of doing that. So I thought I'd just do a little kind of setup rundown, I suppose you'd describe it as. So this is my kind of studio area, my setup. As you can see, I've got the Force, two hardware synthesizers. I've got the Model 12 Tascam mixer interface over here, and then I've got a PC running Ableton Live. Now, the kind of common wisdom that if you've got the Force and the Model 12 is that you would plug the USB into the to the Force so that you could record the synths onto separate audio tracks. That makes perfect sense. The problem with that, if you use the computer for making music or for just for other stuff really, but I make music in Ableton Live and I also produce podcasts for my day job. So if you've got this hooked up like that, excuse me, your monitors aren't connected to the computer. So if you want to do something outside of Force, whether it's music or just other audio stuff, you have to unplug things. Now I know that's not a huge inconvenience, but it is an inconvenience. So that kind of method is it has drawbacks, let's put it that way. It's compromised. The other kind of conventional wisdom is that if you're using Force and Ableton Live together, that you would put the Force into live control mode. And I can see why people do that if they're performing, because if you've got Ableton Live in session view and you're performing on the two together, that works quite nicely. But it doesn't let you necessarily make music on the in Ableton Live with the Force. It doesn't work very well as a control surface. I know you can mess around with remote MIDI, but it's not ideal. So that kind of setup is compromised as well. So I found a way which works for me, which ticks all of the boxes. And what that is, I've got the audio outs from the Force going into the Tascam's stereo input. I have the output from the Digitone going into the Model 12's other stereo inputs, and the mono station into one of the mono inputs. And what that lets me do is, if I just want to have a jam and record something quickly, I can record all of that into the Model 12 using the SD card recorder. Importantly for me, if I'm making a video tutorial, I can put the Model 12's input channels into live mode, which essentially turns it into a mixer, not an interface. And I can combine the output of the Force with my voice from a microphone, combine those, use the channel strips to balance that and send it straight to the camera, which is brilliant for making a video. So that setup obviously works quite nicely for those two scenarios. And also, if you want to, you can, if you wanted to capture a performance, you can record the Force bits using the arranger and capture the two external synths on the SD card. So that is still quite nicely self-contained, and it allows you to keep your monitors plugged into the computer or accessible to the computer, because you've got this connected to the computer via USB. So that's the first part of that kind of solution, if you like. The second is where it gets interesting, is where we bring Ableton Live into it. So I've got Ableton Live connected to the Model 12, so it's being used as an interface, and I've created a little template on Live which I can just drag in, and I've got the Force stereo input and then the Digitone and the mono station just ready to go. But the thing that makes this work really nicely is that I've got MIDI coming out of the Force going into Ableton Live. I can't show it to you because the cable is too short, excuse me, but I'm using an iRig MIDI 2, which is a 5-pin MIDI to USB adapter. So that's basically plugged into to Ableton Live, and it's set up, Ableton Live is set up as external sync. Now what that means is when I press play on the Force, Ableton Live sequencer starts and stops. So if you're using Ableton Live and you're in arrangement mode, everything is in sync. So if we go back to that kind of use case of recording a performance, if I want to capture a performance in this setup, I do exactly the same thing. I can record my two external synths on these two tracks that are audio input tracks that are set up on Ableton Live. Once I've finished the recording, which I've captured in arrangement mode in the Force, I can bounce those individual tracks out and just drag them into Ableton Live, and I can mix the whole thing in Ableton if I want to. The other thing, which is something that people kind of complain about a bit with the Force, and I totally understand why they do, is if you've got this in MIDI mode, you can basically use it as a full control surface for VST. So I've basically got Arturia Pigment sitting on a MIDI track here. I've got one MIDI track set up in the Force, and I can just play it exactly like as if it was a plugin on the Force. But the thing that really makes this work is the sync. Is having Ableton Live and Force synced with with the Force being the brain. It basically means that in this setup you can use the Force completely as a control surface for Ableton Live. So the two are now working perfectly in sync, and you don't miss the fact that you're not able to bring the external synths into the Force because you're just bringing them into Ableton instead. So I found that this is the most flexible setup for these three bits of equipment: the Force and the external synths, the mixer interface, and Ableton. And you never have to plug or unplug anything because everything is accessible to you at any time. So that's the way I do it. I've messed around using live control and found that to be compromised in certain ways. I've found irritations about having the Force plugged in as an interface into the Model 12 as an interface into the Force. This works perfectly, I think. And it's completely flexible. So, Michael, I hope that answered your question, and I hope some other people might find this interesting. This is the way I do it. Obviously, there are going to be people that don't like this method and think there's better ways of doing it, but this is my one and it works. So, thanks very much for watching. I hope this was useful, and I'll see you soon. Bye.